Published 0911 EDT, the 17th of October 2017. Updated 1846 EDT, the 17th of October 2017. President Donald Trump on Tuesday called the families of 4 U.S. troops killed in an ambush in Niger, a day after he said he would call them at the appropriate time when questioned about his public silence. President Trump spoke to all 4 of the families of those who were killed in action in Niger, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in a statement late Tuesday. He offered condolences on behalf of a grateful nation and assured them their families' extraordinary sacrifice to the country will never be forgotten. The president had said a day earlier that he had drafted letters to the families over the weekend, and that they would go out today or tomorrow. President Donald Trump on Tuesday called the families of 4 U.S. troops killed in an ambush in Niger. The White House side indicated that he had held off on calling out of respect for the grieving families, then unloaded on his predecessors with an inaccurate claim that his predecessors didn't call families of the fallen. So the traditional way, if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls, Trump said Monday. A lot of them didn't make calls. I like to call when it's appropriate, when I think I'm able to do it. They have made the ultimate sacrifice, so generally I would say that I like to call. Officials from prior administrations reacted with outrage and the claim was mostly debunked with images and testimonials, although a source confirmed that President Obama did not call John Kelly when his son was killed in action in 2010. Obama's office did not publicly comment on that statement. Kelly and his wife were invited to a Gold Star breakfast and seated at the First Lady's table the spring after Marine First Lieutenant Robert Kelly was killed in Afghanistan. President Donald Trump, with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell at his side in the Rose Garden of the White House, made his first comments on the deadly ambush that killed 4 American Special Forces troops in Niger October. For Trump on Tuesday stood his ground on his claim that his predecessors didn't call families of fallen U.S. servicemen and women, blasting a media flap over his own remarks as fake news. At a news conference Monday, Trump issued his first public comments on the deaths of 4 elite U.S. Special Forces troops in Niger, then spoke at length about own process of writing and calling families of fallen troops and falsely suggesting President Obama and other predecessors hadn't done the same. Fox radio host Brian Kilmeade asked Trump in an interview Tuesday what he thought when you brought up past presidents and what they've done. He wanted to clarify anything there. There was nothing to clarify, Trump responded. Then he turned his fire on nemesis CNN. This was, again, fake news. CNN. You know, they're just a bunch of fakers. So they asked me that question, he said. Trump had been asked why he hadn't responded in public to the October 4th ambush that left 4 U.S. Special Forces dead, and for the most part, to the best of my knowledge, I think I've called every family of somebody that's died, Trump said Tuesday. And it's the hardest call to make. The hardest thing for me to do is do that. Then he went back to Obama, whose healthcare and Iran policies he is in the process of trying to rip up. Trump spoke at length about how he plans to call families of slain U.S. troops at a White House impromptu press conference, and now as far as other representatives, I don't know. I mean, you could ask General John Kelly. Did he get a call from Obama? You could ask other people. I don't know what Obama's policy was. I write letters, and I also call. I have called, I believe, everybody. I've gone to Dover. I've seen what happens at Dover. It's an incredible scene, and very, very sad. One of the saddest things you'll ever see, Trump said. Trump's language was walked back somewhat from Monday, when he said if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls. A lot of them didn't make calls. Obama's former deputy chief of staff Alyssa Mastromonaco termed Trump's comments a thing-lie on Twitter. But I really just speak for myself, Trump said Tuesday. I don't speak for other people. I don't know what Bush did. I don't know what Obama did. You could find out easily what President Obama did. All you have to do is ask the military people. But I believe his policy was somewhat different than my policy. I can tell you my policy is, I've called every one of them. And you have to let a little time go by. You can't just call immediately. But I will be calling, have called, and will be calling the parents and loved ones, wives, etc. of the soldiers that recently were killed. Even as he blasted fake news, Trump heaped praise on Fox, which hosted the interview. Kilmeade did not press Trump on a series of statements from Obama and Bush officials shooting down his claims. It's hard to believe I can get support when you have so many phony stories out there. You know, like CNN, like MSNBC, like NBC. NBC is probably worse than CNN. But all I know is Fox is good. We love you, Fox, Trump said. The president said Tuesday there was nothing to clarify from his Monday remarks. Kellyanne Conway, counselor at the White House, says President Trump only meant to point out there are many different ways to reach out to families of the fallen when he claimed yesterday that his predecessors didn't make calls to the bereaved. What the president was saying there is that are many different ways to reach out to these families. Sometimes you call, sometimes you write, sometimes you actually meet them in the person, she said in an appearance on Fox Friends. Conway indicated the president does not regret what he said because the intent behind his remarks at a spontaneous press conference were very clear. Kellyanne Conway, counselor at the White House, says President Trump only meant to point out there are many different ways to reach out to families of the fallen when he claimed yesterday that his predecessors didn't make calls. Families who lost loved ones in uniform are disagreeing in droves. So are ex-White House staffers. Freddie Ford, a spokesman for George W. Bush, said that even at the height of two wars, wrote all the families of the fallen, and called and met hundreds, if not thousands of family members of slain soldiers. Delilia O'Malley, the sister of a slain U.S. soldier, says the former president listened to her scream and hugged her after her brother was killed in Iraq. Pray Bush listened while I screamed at him, then held me as I sobbed. You fat fing liar, O'Malley tweeted at Trump on Monday night. At a news conference earlier in the day, President Trump issued his first public comments on the deaths of 4 elite U.S. Special Forces troops in Niger. I've written them personal letters. They've been sent if they're going out tonight, but they were written during the weekend, Trump said Monday, after he was asked why he hadn't commented yet on the ambush by an ISIS-affiliated group. I will at some point during the period of time call the parents and the families. Because I have done it traditionally. In Niger, a 12-man Green Beret team had just met with local leaders when they came under an ambush, CNN reported. They were ultimately rescued by French Mirage jets but not before Staff Sergeant Brian Black, Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson, Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright, and Sergeant David T. Johnson were killed. The network noted that Trump was playing golf on Saturday when the body of Johnson, a 25-year-old Army sergeant, arrived at Dover Air Force Base. Trump said Monday that he felt very badly about what happened and it's tough to deliver such difficult news. I felt very, very badly about that. I always feel badly. The toughest calls I have to make are the calls where this happens. Soldiers are killed. It's a very difficult thing. It gets to a point where, you make 4 or 5 of them in one day. It's a very, very tough day. For me that's by far the toughest. It was then that he took a shot at his predecessors, specifically Barack Obama. So the traditional way, if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls, Trump said. A lot of them didn't make calls. I like to call when it's appropriate, when I think I'm able to do it. They have made the ultimate sacrifice, so generally I would say that I like to call. Those calls are expected in the near future. I'm going to be calling them. I want a little time to pass. I'm going to be calling them. I have, as you know, since I've been president I have. But in addition, I actually wrote letters individually to the soldiers we're talking about, and they're going to be going out either today or tomorrow, Trump said. U.S. Army Special Forces soldiers observe as Nigerian Armed Forces service members fire their weapons with the assistance of illumination rounds during an exercise. A Sergeant Brian C. Black, 35, of Puyallup, Washington, and Sergeant Jeremiah W. Johnson, 39, of Springboro, Ohio, as his remarks made waves on the internet. Trump was asked in a follow-up question how he could back up his statement that President Obama didn't call soldiers' families. I don't know if he did. I was told that he didn't often. A lot of presidents don't. They write letters. I do a combination of both. Sometimes it's a very difficult thing to do, but I do a combination of both, he said. President Obama the first think probably did sometimes, and maybe sometimes he didn't. I don't know if that's what I was told, Trump continued. Former Obama communications director Dan Pfeiffer said on Twitter that Trump was lying when he made the astounding claim about his predecessor, a Democrat whose policies he's trying to unravel in just about every circuit. Alyssa Mastromonaco, another Obama alum, said Trump's charge was a fing lie in a tweet in which she called the sitting president a deranged animal. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders later said the president wasn't criticizing predecessors, but stating a fact. Conway attempted to change the subject to the president's remorse that he had to make the calls in the first place when the issue came up on Fox Friends. "This is a man has a great capacity for empathy," she said. Former Obama Deputy Chief of Staff Alyssa Mastromonaco called Trump's comment about his predecessors failing to call families of the fallen a "fing" Sergeant Dustin M. Wright, 29, of Lyons, Georgia and Sergeant David T. Johnson of Miami Gardens, Florida. Fox Friends host Brian Kilmeade, who was broadcasting from the White House today, refused to let Conway off the hook. He pressed her to say whether Trump regretted his remarks. "I think he made very clear in there what he meant and what he was saying," Conway argued. "And his focus, again, Brian, his focus is always on the grieving, on the families, on the loss of life, and on protecting our soldiers. The armed forces, along with veterans, law enforcement and first responders, was a top motivator for Trump to run for president," she offered. "They are up there on his list of priorities," Conway asserted.